If you're in the market for a compact hatchback or sedan, you cannot do better than the Honda Civic. Full stop. And it's been that way for decades, pretty much. I mean, it's built its reputation for affordability, quality, and efficiency. This 11th generation Honda Civic was last redesigned in 2022, and for 2025, it gets a significant refresh with a ton of big changes. Before we get into those big changes, do us a favor, hit those like and subscribe buttons below to get all of our latest content. As you can see from these orange power leads, this is a hybrid. The 2025 Honda Civic Hybrid has a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine that's paired with 2 electric motors. Combined, they make 200 horsepower and 233 pound-feet of torque. It is front-wheel drive only through a continuously variable transmission, and it's the same engine that comes in the CR-V Hybrid as well as the Accord Hybrid. It's worth noting, though, that the CR-V does have an option for all-wheel drive, which is not offered on this or the Accord. Other changes include the base engine, which loses a little horsepower, but you probably won't feel it because the torque comes on much earlier. So pretty much it'll be a wash. But the payoff is you also get about 1 mpg better with that base engine. Above all of this, the SI and the Type R, well, we don't have that much information on them, but you can expect that they'll get the same styling refresh that these models got. Styling-wise, the biggest change can be found up front. Now, we have much bigger grills, top and bottom, and between them, there's this kind of bodywork here that extends a little further out, giving it a little bit of a sleeker profile versus last year's, which didn't have that and had kind of this blunted nose look. Personally, I like the new treatment because it gives it a little more sporty aggression. But what do you think? Do you like the new styling, or are you partial to the previous generation? Let us know what you think in the comments below. But enough of this gawking and specs. Let's find out how this all comes together on the road, so let's go for a spin. With this new hybrid engine, it starts you off with electric propulsion, which means you get some pretty good response. It's pretty immediate, pretty much like an EV. Right after that, the internal combustion engine springs to life and keeps you going down the road. One thing I'm noticing that's very different about this hybrid is it's really quiet when you're in electric mode, obviously, but it's not entirely all that loud when the engine comes on, and you really don't feel much of a shudder once it does spring to life. Another thing that's keeping this interior nice and quiet is active noise cancellation. So you're not getting any of that kind of white noise or boominess. Honda also says that they retuned the suspension to make it handle just a little bit sportier, and to their credit, I don't feel any difference in ride quality. It's still nice and smooth and comfortable. Power delivery wise, it's more than adequate. This has 200 horsepower, which is just a little bit more than the turbo engine that this actually replaces. It has a continuously variable transmission, but just driving around conservatively, it's not droning or hanging on revs like some other CVTs do. As far as braking goes, you also don't feel much of a transition between regenerative braking and when the pads actually bite down on the rotors. From the driver's seat, you really don't have to treat this any different than any other compact sedan, hybrid or otherwise. Visibility-wise, it's also quite good. This front roof pillar here doesn't get in the way of sharp left turns, and I have a decent view out the back, but not expansive. It's pretty much what you'd expect from the class. Here on the steering wheel, we do have these paddles, but they're not for the transmission. They're for regenerative braking and how much regen you want. So if I crank it all the way down to its lowest, it doesn't drop the anchor when you let off the throttle, but it does slow you down a little more than just coasting. It will not, however, let you do one-pedal driving. Overall, this Civic Hybrid kind of goes right down the middle of the lane. It's not too sporty, not too boring. It's just easy to drive and pleasant. Now, if you're looking for a little more excitement, there's options like the Kia Forte and the Mazda 3. But for most drivers, I think they're going to be perfectly happy with this Honda Civic Hybrid. You also have these selectable drive modes down here. You can choose between individual, sport, normal, and econ. Now, these don't have adaptive dampers, so it's not going to change the ride quality or make it handle better, but it will dull some of the engine response if you're in econ mode, and it'll sharpen it if you're in sport mode. Overall, it doesn't really change the character that much of the vehicle, but it's nice to have, just in case you want a little extra zing when you're having fun in the canyons. On the inside, the Honda Civic doesn't really change that much, but there are some changes that maybe you won't notice at first. At first glance, the dash is still very attractive with this nice metal mesh grille. In this Top Sport Touring model, you also get this digital instrument panel and a 9-inch infotainment touchscreen. Most notably about this touchscreen, it's now running Google built in, but only on the Touring trims. Also with the Touring trims, you get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which pairs really well with this wireless phone charger here. Sadly, in the supporting trims, you do not get wireless phone connectivity. I particularly like this center console texture here, which is kind of corduroy-like. In other vehicles, it might be piano black, which is a magnet for smudges and fingerprints and dust, but here, it kind of looks clean all the time. Personally, I like it a lot. Elsewhere, materials are comparable for the class. They're pretty good. Nice soft touch materials here and there with a little bit of hard plastic where you're not really going to touch it much. As far as storage goes, nice big cup holders here. Again, this rubberized phone tray and a pretty deep center console bin. Door pockets, they're about moderate in size. You can still put a water bottle in there, but probably not one of those bigger bottles. Another way this Touring trim dresses up the interior is with genuine leather upholstery and a Bose premium audio system. Here in the back seat, I have plenty of room, perhaps a little more room than you might expect from a compact sedan like this. Now, I'm 5'10", sitting behind the driver's seat that's set for me, and as you can see, there's a ton of legroom for me and plenty of space under the seat for my feet. As is customary, the materials back here aren't quite as nice as the front. They're a little more hard plastic, and that's for durability, so kids or unruly passengers won't mess things up back here. One thing that I think is missing though is charge ports. We don't have any USB charge ports here in the center console, and there also aren't any air vents, so maybe not as accommodating as some of the rivals, but it should still be just fine back here. You also have this padded armrest with some cup holders in case you don't need that middle seat. Here in the back, we have 14.8 cubic feet of cargo space. That's fairly large for a compact sedan. It's more what I'm used to from a mid-size sedan like the Accord or Camry. And as you can see, it's a very usable space. Underneath, there's also a couple bins here for extra storage, and you also have these handy latches here that drop the rear seat back, so you don't have to go back and forth between the rear seats when you have bulkier objects to load. On the whole, there's a whole lot to like about this new Honda Civic Hybrid. It drives great, really doesn't require any effort on your part, and it gets amazing fuel economy. But let's talk about the price. The base hybrid starts right around $30,000, and this Top Sport Touring model starts around $33,000. Compare that to the comparable Sport model without the hybrid, which starts around $27,000, and yeah, there is a couple $1,000s you're gonna have to shell out for the honor of having a hybrid. Now, if you break that down price-wise, driving 15,000 miles a year at $4 a gallon or so, it would take about 5.7 years for you to break even to recoup that premium cost that you get with a hybrid. Now, if you're planning on keeping your car, let's say 7 years, which is about average for this class, that should be just fine. And keep in mind, every year afterwards, you're probably gonna be saving around $440 in fuel costs. So yeah, it kind of does make sense if you're in it for the long haul. Compared to others in the class, well, there are several hybrids that are strong competitors. We have the Hyundai Elantra Hybrid, the Toyota Corolla Hybrid, and of course the Toyota Prius. The Hyundai and Toyota get right around low 50 mpg, while the Prius beats them all with 57 mpg at its peak. This is rated right between 50 mpg city and 49 mpg in combined driving. That's a solid number, especially for something that doesn't look like a hybrid. Now, the Toyota Corolla is a couple $1,000s cheaper, but it's not nearly as enjoyable to drive or pleasant on the road. This kind of hits all the high spots for me. So if you're in the market for something that's going to really save you a lot at the gas pump, check out the all-new 2025 Honda Civic Hybrid. But that begs the question, what would you do? Would you go for the new hybrid or stick with the base engine? Or would you go with the Prius, the Corolla, or the Elantra? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on the road.